I am a long-haul truck driver. For 17 years, I have driven across thousands of miles of America, from deserts to misty harbors. I thought I knew every danger in this world. But what broke me was not an accident or a stormy night on the highway. It was a quiet house where my own son was being abused by the person I once loved. The night I watched that camera footage, I didn't hear any crying, only the sound of my heart breaking, beat by beat. And from that moment, I understood that silence can hurt or save someone, depending on how we use it. If you are a parent, someone who has left home to make a living, or someone who has ever believed that everything is fine, stay until the end of this story. Because sometimes justice doesn't need to shout. It just needs one person calm enough to hear the silence inside their own home. Leave a single dot. If you believe that gratitude and love, when given the right way, can save a child. And click subscribe so you won't miss the true stories, where justice doesn't explode, it shines like headlights through the rain. I returned to Bridgeport on a foggy afternoon. The port city always carried the smell of salt and engine oil, a scent so familiar that one breath told me I was home. On both sides of the road, yellow lights fractured through thick fog like floating shards of glass. My semi-truck groaned uphill, tires scraping wet asphalt, leaving a faint gleam in the rearview mirror. 12 days on the road, each stop, each engine sound, brought back one image: my little boy in the red brick house at the end of Maple Street. I had imagined him running out, laughing, wrapping his arms around my legs like always. But when the truck turned onto that familiar street, the porch was still. No small footsteps. Only a pale light filtering through the curtains, cold and distant. I opened the door. The hinge creaked like an old sigh. Inside, Serena stood in the kitchen holding a dish towel. She looked up with a faint, strained smile. "You're back? He's tired, sleeping in his room." Her voice was soft as steam, but carried no warmth. I set my bag down, my road-dusty shoes sliding slightly on the polished wooden floor. In my head, the diesel hum from the harbor still played, a steady rhythm that now became the background noise of emptiness. On the coat rack, my leather jacket still hung there, dust layering its shoulders. The hook seemed to have frozen time since the day I left. I touched the collar, cold and dry, still smelling of fuel and metal. No one had touched it. I looked around. Everything in the house was too neat, as if no one truly lived there. Serena said, "You've been gone so long, he missed you." But if that were true, why did the living room feel lifeless? And why was the drawing Lucas made for me last month missing from the wall? I headed toward the stairs. The house was so silent I could hear wind slipping through the window cracks. I knocked gently. "Lucas, Dad's home." No reply, only the faint tap of air in the vent. I opened the door and saw him lying on his side, back turned to me, the blanket pulled to his shoulders. I sat at the edge of the bed and brushed his hair. He stirred and whispered, "Dad, you're back?" "Yeah, I'm back. Why didn't you come out to greet me?" "I'm just a little tired." He didn't look at me. The nightlight revealed a faint bruise under his eye. I thought maybe he hadn't slept well or studied too hard. I adjusted his blanket, and a faint smell of antiseptic drifted up. I froze. "What happened to you?" He shook his head. "It's nothing, Dad." I stayed silent for a few seconds. The door stood ajar, enough to show Serena's shadow at the end of the hall. She called softly, "Let him rest, honey. He's had a little fever." I nodded and stepped out. When the door closed, I could still hear Lucas's thin breathing, steady as the wind whistling through the steel pipes by the docks. Downstairs, Serena poured me a glass of water. Her hands were slender, fingers dusted with flour. I remembered once loving those hands, gentle, careful. But when she set the glass down, something in me went cold. "How was the trip?" she asked. "Fine, just tiring." "This one was longer than usual, right?" 12 days, added a main route. She nodded, eyes drifting away. I wanted to ask why Lucas seemed sad. why his gaze stayed on the floor, and why his room smelled of medicine. But I stayed quiet. Questions, if unprepared, can sometimes push the truth deeper into the dark. That night I opened the bedroom window. Far away, a ship horn echoed from the Bridgeport harbor, long and mournful, like a voice calling from another world. I looked down at the porch. My jacket still hung there, swaying lightly. The streetlight cast golden dust motes into the air, floating as if time itself had stopped. Serena lay turned away. I heard her breathing evenly, though I wasn't sure she slept. On the table, the clock read 12:30. I thought about Lucas, the bruise, the smell of antiseptic. Something wasn't right, but I told myself, never conclude without proof. A trucker learns patience. You don't conquer the road with anger, only with observation. I closed the curtain, turned off the light, leaving the room thick with silence. Outside, fog still cloaked the harbor, and in that darkness I didn't yet know that tonight would be the first night of another kind of journey, one with no steering wheel, no map, only the truth waiting for me to find it. The next morning I woke up earlier than usual. Autumn light in Bridgeport is strange, both warm and cold, cutting through the curtains into suspended streaks of dust that look like smoke. I went downstairs, made coffee, and listened for any sound in the house. Only the soft hum of the refrigerator and the steady drip of water in the sink. Lucas wasn't up yet. Serena was in the bathroom, the sound of running water echoing down the hallway, steady as a heartbeat with no emotion. I opened the fridge and saw Lucas's lunchbox from last night, still untouched. The boy used to love chicken sandwiches, yet now he had taken only a few bites. When he came down the stairs, I smiled. "Good morning, son." "Morning, Dad." His voice was so small I had to lean in to hear it. His hair was messy, dark circles under his eyes, and his small shoulders were shrinking under a gray hoodie. I pulled out a chair, motioning for him to sit. "You okay?" "Yes, I'm fine." "How's school?" "Just normal." He answered quickly, lowering his head toward the cereal bowl as if it were a shield. Every time I tried to ask more, he hurried another spoonful into his mouth, as though trying to block my questions mid-air. I noticed his left hand tremble slightly as he held the spoon, a faint purple mark on his wrist about the length of my pinky. I kept my tone calm. "What happened to your hand?" Lucas froze. His eyes darted toward the stairs, where Serena's footsteps echoed downward. I fell at school." "Fell?" "Yeah, playing ball. It's nothing." He forced a crooked, empty smile and looked back down at his bowl. Serena walked in, her perfume mingling with soap. "What are you asking him?" "I saw a bruise on his hand." She glanced over and said softly but firmly, "He's clumsy. He fell in his room yesterday. I already told him to be careful." I looked at her for a few seconds without replying. In the light, the thin layer of powder on her cheeks made her face glow, but her eyes carried no warmth. After dropping Lucas at school, I decided to stop by for a visit. Maple Hill Elementary sat at the end of a maple-lined street, glowing red. I parked by the fence and walked into the office. Lucas's teacher, Ms. Megan Holt, came out to greet me, a woman in her early 30s, hair neatly tied, voice gentle yet direct. "Mr. Rowan, I'm glad you came." "Is something wrong?" She invited me into her office and poured a glass of water. "Nothing serious, but I've noticed Lucas has changed lately." "Changed how?" "He's quiet, withdrawn. He used to be cheerful, always helping classmates. Now he sits still, sometimes dozes off. When I asked, he said, 'I can't sleep.'" "Did he say why?" "He told me, I don't want Mom to get mad." I froze. That sentence rang in my head like metal hitting concrete. Ms. Holt looked uneasy. "Please don't take this the wrong way. It might be something small at home. But fear doesn't come from thin air. Children learn it from someone." I thanked her and promised to keep an eye on him. Back in the truck, I sat still for a while, fingers tapping the steering wheel. The images replayed, the bruise, the avoidance in Lucas's eyes, and that line, "I don't want Mom to get mad." That afternoon, I came home earlier than usual. The house was uncomfortably quiet. Serena sat on the sofa reading a magazine, lamplight smoothing her face like a mask. "You knew I stopped by Lucas's school today?" I asked. She looked up, startled. "Yes, his teacher called me. You think I don't care about my own son?" "No, but she said Lucas seems tired, withdrawn." Serena set the magazine down, her tone sharp. "Kids change. He's almost 11, hitting puberty and moody. You're gone all the time. You wouldn't understand." I swallowed my words, keeping calm. "I'm just worried, that's all." "Instead of worrying, you should be home more." That line cut like a small knife at my pride. I looked around, the white walls, wooden table, ticking clock, everything spotless, lifeless. I felt estranged from my own home. Dinner that night was one of the quietest of my life. Serena sat across, eyes fixed on her phone, while Lucas ate in small, slow bites. I tried to start a conversation. "Need help with homework?" "No, Dad. Having fun at school?" "It's fine." Serena interrupted. "Stop asking. Let him eat." I fell silent. The sound of silverware against plates was shrill. The tang of tomato sauce hung heavy, mingling with the ticking clock, marking each second like a metronome of unease. When Lucas excused himself and went upstairs, I watched him go, each step light, careful as if afraid to wake someone. I realized it had been a long time since I'd heard him laugh. That bright sound once made me drive hundreds of miles just to get home a day early. Now it was gone. Later that night, I sat alone in the dim living room. Serena was asleep. I looked up the stairs, the crack of light under Lucas's door faintly glowing. In the dark, my heartbeat thudded slow and heavy, like an old truck engine waiting to start. Something was wrong. I knew it. But without proof, suspicion is only a breeze passing through fog. I told myself, tomorrow I'll watch more closely, because sometimes the silence of a child is far more terrifying than any cry. The second night after I came back, Bridgeport was still wrapped in fog. Waves from the harbor thudded rhythmically against the seawall, murmuring like the breathing of a giant animal asleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, unable to close my eyes. Since returning, I'd felt as if the house had shrunk, its walls the same, yet its warmth and light somehow drained away. Serena lay turned away, sleeping silently like a stone. Around 2 a.m, I heard a faint sound. At first I thought it was the wind, but it was too steady, too delicate. The long squeak of a wooden hinge, then stillness. A door. My heart pounded. Footsteps followed, soft, slow, deliberate, moving along the upstairs hallway. Not Lucas's. These steps had the click of narrow heels, the steady rhythm of an adult. I didn't turn on the light. I sat upright, listening. The door to Lucas's room opened, then silence. After a moment, another sound, barely audible, the scrape of a wooden chair. I looked at the clock. 2:18. Every minute dragged like an hour. I wanted to get up, but something inside told me to wait. I held my breath. 30 minutes passed, and when that door finally closed, the hinge squealed again, long, dry, and cold. Serena returned to our room, her steps soft as mist. I rolled over and pretended to sleep. She lay down. The blanket shifted. Her perfume lingered, the kind she only wore when going out. I stayed still, listening to my own heartbeat pounding inside my chest. The next morning, as I made coffee, Lucas came down the stairs, eyes red and puffy. I asked quietly, "Didn't sleep well?" He shook his head, voice barely a whisper. "I dreamed about a storm. Mom came to calm me down." I turned to Serena, who was preparing breakfast, smiling faintly. "He's been having strange dreams lately, probably because of your truck stories." I said nothing. I looked at Lucas's hands, his nails bitten short, skin around them raw and torn. Something in his eyes chilled me, a guardedness no child should carry. I wanted to ask more, but Serena set a plate of eggs down hard, the clink of porcelain freezing the air. After dropping him off at school, I drove around the city for a while before stopping at a gas station off Interstate 95. I called Nate, a fellow trucker, divorced, raising his 8-year-old daughter alone. Nate was blunt, the kind of man who spoke like a hammer hitting steel. "Hey, Mike, you up early?" "Couldn't sleep." "What's wrong?" I took a deep breath. "Lucas. Something's off. He's quiet, bruised, and last night I heard Serena go into his room at 2 in the morning. Stayed for about 30 minutes. Silence on the other end. "Did you ask her?" "She said he had a nightmare about a storm." "Do you believe that?" "No, but I don't know what to do." Nate exhaled. "Listen to me. I ignored signs like that once, and I'll never forgive myself. If something feels wrong, trust your gut. Don't confront her yet. Just make sure everything's recorded." "What do you mean?" "Set up cameras. You've got reason to worry, but no proof. If you talk without evidence, she'll turn it on you. I've seen it." I stayed silent. Nate was right. Serena was clever, skilled at making my words sound like the paranoia of a man gone too long from home. "Know any cameras that are small but clear?" I asked. "Mini Wi-Fi ones, about $200. You can control them through your phone. I'll send you a link." "Thanks, Nate. And Mike, if the worst happens, don't try to be a hero. Have a witness." I sat in the truck looking through the fogged windshield. Outside, a father and his little girl left the station, the child in a red beanie holding a donut, smiling widely. The sight stabbed my chest. How long had it been since I'd seen Lucas smile like that? Afternoon, I got home early. Serena was watering the plants, a faint smile curving her lips when she saw me. "Home early?" "Yeah. Wanted to stay in tonight?" She tilted her head, her eyes unreadable. "Good. Hope you stay longer than a few days this time." I nodded, keeping my voice steady. In my mind, the plan had already begun. A simple one, but precise. I needed the truth, and this time not through instinct, but through undeniable evidence. As night fell, I lay listening to the wind curling over the bay. That door was still there, its hinge waiting. But tonight, if it opened again, I wouldn't just listen. I would see. Because sometimes, to save a child, a father must learn to look directly at what terrifies him most. The third morning, Bridgeport's sunlight was dull and gray, like glass covered in dust. I sat at the dining table flipping through the newspaper, unable to read a single word, the smell of cold coffee mixed with damp wood. Lucas was in the living room, crouched on the rug, playing alone with old toys. The small plastic wheels scraping across the floor made a dry, lonely sound. I looked over, his little red fire truck, the one I'd given him when he turned 6. He used to love it so much that he took it everywhere, even to bed. Now it was wrapped tightly in gray duct tape, so thick the backlatch couldn't even open. "What are you doing, Lucas?" I asked gently. He froze, turning his head slowly. Nothing, Dad." "Why'd you tape it shut? Is it broken?" "No, I just don't want—" He hesitated, glancing toward the stairs. "I don't want it to make noise anymore." "What noise?" Lucas went silent. His chin trembled, then suddenly he stood up, clutching the toy to his chest, and ran upstairs. The door slammed, a sharp, hollow sound that echoed through the house. I rose to follow, but heard Serena's heels tapping steadily on the wood floor as she came down the stairs. "What did you say to him?" she asked, calm but edged. "Nothing. I asked about his toy." "You scared him." Serena folded her arms, eyes cold. "He's been under enough stress. You've been home 3 days, and the whole house already feels upside down." "What's that supposed to mean?" "Think about it. 12 days away, the boy only had me. He needs stability. Don't dig things up just because you feel something's off." I swallowed my anger. "I'm not digging. I just thought it strange that he taped up his toy." "Kids do strange things." She turned away, pouring water into a glass, her tone softer. "Maybe you've forgotten what that feels like." The sound of water filling the glass was like a string tightening between us. I was about to reply when Lucas's door opened. He stood at the top of the stairs, still holding the toy, eyes fixed on us below. For one brief second, I saw real fear there. Not fear of being scolded, but fear of knowing something. "Come eat breakfast, sweetheart," Serena said sweetly, her smile pretending nothing had happened. "I'm not hungry," Lucas murmured, retreating into his room. The door closed softly this time. I heard the quiet click of the lock, but it sounded like a period at the end of a sentence. That evening, the air inside felt heavy. Rain lashed the harbor windows and wind howled through the chimney. Serena was watching the news in the living room, TV light flickering across her face, making her look beautiful, yet distant. I stepped closer, stopping beside the chair. "Do you know why Lucas taped up his toy?" "I told you, stop overreacting. He's a kid." "But he said he didn't want to hear the noise anymore." "Do you know what that means?" "He's probably talking nonsense. You've been gone too long. Now every little thing seems strange to you." She turned off the TV and faced me, eyes locked. "You don't trust me, do you, Michael?" I stayed quiet for a moment. "I just want to understand what's happening in my house." "In your house?" She gave a short, bitter laugh. "That's rich. For the past 2 years, this house has been me and him. You drive from state to state, send money, and think that's enough. But here, I carry it all." I exhaled, steadying my voice. "You're blaming me for being away, but I'm just trying to protect our son." "Protect him from who? His own mother?" Serena stood, eyes flashing with anger she tried to hide. "Listen to yourself. You're starting to sound paranoid." The words hit like a slap. I turned away without replying. Behind me, her voice softened, weary. "I just want this family to be peaceful. Don't turn it into an investigation." I went upstairs. Passing Lucas's room, I saw the thin stripe of light under his door. Dim, yellow. I stopped, hand half raised to knock, but froze. Serena's question echoed in my head. "You don't trust me, do you?" No, I didn't. But I still had nothing to prove otherwise. In our bedroom, I stared out the window. The rain had stopped, leaving mist on the glass. In the blurred reflection, my face looked unfamiliar. A father, a husband, a skeptic, all overlapping. That night, the rain ceased completely. Yet somewhere in the house, I could still hear a faint, repeating sound, like a toy's small wheels dragging across the wooden floor, slow, distant, and full of warning. The fourth morning, fog smothered the road leading to downtown Bridgeport. I drove, barely seeing beyond the red taillights ahead. In my mind, Nate's words from the day before kept repeating, "Don't confront yet. Get proof." I stopped at a small electronics shop on Harbor Street. The glass door was fogged with condensation, and inside, blue light from display screens flickered softly. A young man with a name tag reading Jesse approached with a friendly smile. "Morning, sir. What are you looking for?" I lowered my voice. "I need a mini camera. Connects to a phone, as discreet as possible." His eyebrows lifted slightly, his tone dropping. "You mean something for home security or something more personal?" "Personal, but it has to be clear." He nodded and pulled a small black matte box from the cabinet, no bigger than a hand. "This one's wide angle, records in the dark, runs 4 hours on battery, or you can plug it in. $219. I stared at the box, my stomach twisting. Me, a father, resorting to a camera to watch my own home. The guilt rose, then was swallowed by fear. I'll take it. On the way back, I parked near the harbor and opened the box. The device was frighteningly small, no larger than a coin, its blue indicator light blinking as it powered on. I installed the app, tested the connection. The image was sharp, zoomed, and even had infrared. Everything was ready. That afternoon, I waited until Serena took Lucas to his piano lesson. Once their car left the driveway, I went up to his room and quietly locked the door. The room was unnervingly tidy, the desk empty, toys arranged in perfect order. I knelt by the bookshelf, searching for a hidden angle. At the lowest shelf, behind a stack of old comics and dusty Lego boxes, I mounted the camera to the inner panel, aimed straight toward the center of the room. On my phone screen, the feed appeared clear. The desk, the bed, the window, and the red fire truck still in the corner, wrapped thick in gray duct tape. I adjusted the brightness and put the phone in my pocket. My heart raced, but a cold calm spread through me. Finally, I wasn't blind anymore. That night, Serena came home late. She entered the room carrying a perfume I didn't recognize, not the one she usually wore. "You're still up?" she asked, slipping off her coat. "Yeah. I thought maybe we could go out tonight. New place by the bay. One drink, clear our heads." I looked at her, the yellow light casting half her face in shadow. "I'm tired. Need to be up early." "Tired, or just don't want to go?" Her voice softened, laced with something sharp. I shrugged lightly. "I don't want to leave Lucas alone." She laughed, short and brittle, echoing through the empty room. "You worry too much, Michael. Kids need space." She left, the door half closed behind her. I stayed, listening to her footsteps fade away. When the clock hit 12:40, I opened my phone and launched the camera app. The screen glowed, a quiet image of Lucas's room, bathed in faint infrared light. Everything is still, curtains swaying gently with the wind. I set the phone beside me, eyes fixed on the screen. After a while, a small indicator blinked in the corner of the feed. A faint streak of light moved across. Unclear where it came from. Maybe a reflection from the hallway? I held my breath, zoomed in. No one. Just the dim glow pulsing softly, then fading. I lay still, my pulse pounding against my throat. Outside, the wind whistled through the chimney and rain began to fall, each drop drumming against the roof like a countdown to something near. When I turned off the phone, the ghostly streak still lingered on the screen. Small, blurred, but freezing me to the core. Because in that house something was moving, and this time I knew for certain it wasn't my imagination. The fifth night. Bridgeport was eerily silent. The sound of dew on the roof felt like someone breathing. I lay in darkness, eyes wide open, staring at the phone screen beside my pillow. The camera app was still connected, a small line of text glowing at the corner. Recording. Live. 02:12 a.m. The infrared light bathed Lucas's room. Everything was still. Only the shape of the duct-taped red fire truck lay in the corner. Then the door slowly opened. A sliver of light spilled in. Serena. She stepped inside, wearing a thin gray robe, her hair loose, holding something long in her hand. Lucas was lying on his side, just waking up. I saw him lift his head, mouth opening to speak, but Serena pressed a finger to her lips. She whispered, clear enough that the sound cut through the speaker like a blade. "You must not tell your father. Do you hear me?" She pulled out the roll of tape and tore a strip. My breath caught. Serena leaned down, covering Lucas's mouth. The boy struggled, his small hands clawing to pull away, but she held firm, her eyes cold as glass. "I told you. Don't disobey." The audio was faint, but I heard the muffled sobs beneath the tape. She stood, drew from her robe a soft fabric belt, maybe the tie from her gown. No shouting, no rage, just chilling control. Each strike landed with a dry, sharp sound, Lucas's small body jerking with each one. I held my breath, gripping the phone so tight it shook. The boy cried soundlessly, his shoulders trembling, eyes wide toward the door, as if praying someone would enter. I didn't realize when the phone slipped from my hand. The dull clatter in the dark sounded like thunder. I sank to the floor, clutching my head, heart racing out of rhythm. My body was ice. Images spun, Serena, the belt, Lucas's eyes, and me, a useless father watching from a screen. In the faint red glow, I saw my reflection in the glass, a man who had spent half his life on the road, believing he was providing for his family. But now, seeing what was happening in his own home, I understood. Every mile had a price. Mine were the bruises on my child's arms, the nights he cried silently while I was gone. It took nearly 10 minutes before I picked the phone up again. The feed was still live. Serena bent close, whispering in his ear, "If you speak again, I'll make you understand." Then she brushed his hair like it was affection, turned off the light, and left the room in darkness. The camera froze on Lucas's face under the dim red tint, his eyes wide, tears streaming backward into the pillow. I couldn't breathe. Every nerve in my body tore at once. I don't remember when I started crying. Rage and guilt surged together, choking me. I jumped up, trembling, and opened my laptop to download the video. My hands shook as I saved it to the drive. The file name appeared automatically, Cam Lucas, 0213 AM MP4. I watched it again to make sure it wasn't a nightmare. But the more I saw, the clearer it became. No more doubt. It was Serena, and it was my son. I copied the file to a USB drive and marked it with red tape. Evidence, private. Then I sealed it in an envelope and wrote, "For Pete Marlin, attorney at law." Pete had been my college friend, a civil lawyer who once told me, "When you can't speak the truth, let the evidence speak for you." Tonight, I needed him more than ever. I put on my jacket and drove out, though the sky was still black. Bridgeport at night looked deserted, streetlights glowing amber, fog thick over the docks, a ship's horn echoing like a warning. I stopped by the mailbox at the end of the street, gripping the envelope. When I dropped it through the slot, my hand shook uncontrollably. The faint clunk as it hit the bottom sounded small, yet it carried pain, guilt, and the beginning of justice. I stood there a long time, fog wrapped around my legs, biting cold. In my chest, one question I couldn't say aloud. How long had this been happening? Under my own roof. I drove back as dawn broke. In the rearview mirror, the pink morning light hit a street sign, faintly illuminating the words, Harbor Avenue, 2:47 a.m. And I, a father who had just mailed proof of his own wife's crime, gripped the wheel and whispered into the emptiness, "Son, this time I won't stay silent." The next morning, the Bridgeport sky was unnaturally clear. Sunlight spread across the dew-wet rooftops, as if the whole neighborhood had been washed clean. But inside me, everything was still muddy. I made coffee like every other morning, forcing my breath to stay steady. Every movement had to be measured. I knew one wrong look, and Serena would sense something was off. She came down the stairs in a light-colored dress, hair neatly tied, a bright smile on her face. No trace of the woman I had seen in the video the night before. She kissed my cheek, her perfume brushing past my nose, the scent I once loved, now only making my stomach twist. "Did you sleep well?" she asked gently. "Well enough," I said, keeping my tone flat. "Good. I have a client meeting at 9. Oh, don't forget to take Lucas to school." I nodded, sipping the coffee. Her eyes were clear, her face calm, so calm I had to remind myself not to stare too long, or the rage inside me might surface. Lucas came down a few minutes later. He wore his backpack, head low, shoulders tensed as he passed his mother. Serena touched his shoulder lightly, smiling the same smile, but Lucas flinched, just enough for me to notice. "Let's go, son, I'll drive," I said. "Yes, Dad." He was silent the whole ride to school. The morning light reflected off the windshield and painted his face pale. I searched for the right words. "Son, you have gym today, right? Don't forget your water." "Yes, sir." "And did Mom yell at you or anything?" He hesitated, eyes fixed on his knees. "Mom said, 'I have to be better, so you won't worry.'" My grip tightened on the wheel. You know, sometimes adults say things that aren't right. But just remember, your dad believes you. Lucas turned to me, his eyes glistening. For a moment I saw the 5-year-old who used to run to meet me when my truck turned onto our street, holding up his toy rig and grinning. Now only silence remained. I parked in front of the school, lowering my voice. "I'll pick you up early today, okay?" "Okay." He stepped out, looked back once, a glance, but enough to make my heart crack. I waited until the school bell rang. then drove straight to Maple Hill and asked to meet Miss Megan Holt. She received me in a small office behind the library with a calm face, tired eyes of someone who'd graded too late the night before. "Mr. Rowan, is something wrong?" I closed the door, sat down, and placed a white envelope on the table. "Do you remember what you told me about Lucas? About how he seemed afraid of his mother?" She nodded, frowning slightly. "I remember." "Did you find something?" I looked at her for a few seconds, then pushed the envelope toward her. "There's a recording inside. You don't need to watch it now. Just know this is proof that Lucas is being abused." The room froze. She was silent for a moment, then spoke slowly. "You're certain?" "I saw it. From a camera I set up in his room." She exhaled, her hand trembling slightly. "I'll have to report this immediately to Child Protective Services. They have their own investigation process. But you should know, they'll need the original footage, and they may question both of you." "I understand. I just want my son safe." She nodded firmly, her voice returning to professional steadiness. "I'll file the report today and notify the principal so we can arrange observation for Lucas. Would you like me to contact a juvenile attorney as well? I've already sent the original to a lawyer friend, Pete Marlin, but I need you as an educational witness, the first to notice the signs." "I'll do everything I can." She hesitated, then asked softly, "Mr. Rowan, has Serena ever been like this before? I checked Lucas's records. His behavior changed only recently. Before that, he was social, had top grades, and even joined the robotics team." I shook my head. "She wasn't like that, at least not before. I met Serena when she worked at an interior design firm. Always gentle. Kind." Ms. Holt sighed. "Strange. Other teachers said the same. No one here ever saw signs of instability. Only lately, as if something flipped inside. Her—" I bowed my head. "I don't know what changed. But right now, that doesn't matter as much as keeping Lucas safe. I'll find the reason later." She nodded, tone firm again. "Understood. We'll take care of him first." She looked directly at me, eyes resolute, no longer just a gentle teacher. In them was something I'd long lost, the belief that justice could still wear a human face. As I turned to leave, she stood and said quietly, "Mr. Rowan, you did the right thing. Don't blame yourself. Many fathers never find the courage to face the truth like you." I stopped at the door, drew a deep breath, and answered, "Courage? No, I'm just trying to make up for the times I stayed silent too long." On the drive back, clouds gathered. The sound of waves from Bridgeport Harbor echoed faintly, brushing against rooftops. In the rearview mirror, I saw Lucas's eyes that morning, fearful yet pleading, and I knew then, from this day forward, I could never leave this city again, because justice for my son no longer lived at the end of a long-haul road. It was here, in the house that once was a home, and now stood as the scene of truth. That afternoon, the Bridgeport sky looked like it had cracked open. Storm rain slammed against the windshield, and the wind howled around the streetlights, twisting them into gray spirals. I was driving back from attorney Pete Marlin's office when my phone rang. The screen lit up with Tyler's name. His voice was urgent. "Michael, listen fast. Serena just left for groceries. She'll be back in maybe 30 minutes. I'm on my way to the school. Lucas just got out." "Keep everything normal," I said. "Don't let anyone suspect." I could hear his car splashing through puddles, a horn echoing through the heavy, wet air. Every word was swallowed by rain. 10 minutes later, a text appeared. "Got him. Turning onto Harbor Road. The kid's okay, but shaking." I stared at the words, my heart pounding like it might burst. Then a few seconds later, the phone vibrated again. This time, Serena. The glowing screen cut through the storm's dark blur. My thumb hovered, then I answered. "Michael, did you see Lucas at school? I got there late, and his teacher said he had already left. Tyler's not picking up either." Her voice was sharp, tight as wire. I forced my tone to be calm. "Maybe Tyler stopped by my place. He said he wanted to show the boy his new car. And no one thought to tell me? I'm his mother, Michael." I'll call you back. I'm driving. I hung up. My hands were slick with sweat, the wheel slippery enough that I had to grip it twice to steady it. Thunder crashed against the glass. Lightning flashed across the rain-smeared windshield, flooding the cabin in white. Another text came through. She's calling nonstop. I'm not answering. Heading north on the highway. I replied, Go straight to my house. Garage doors open. Don't stop. The rain thickened. The wipers thudded furiously, tires hissing across the flooded asphalt like stretched metal wires. In the rearview mirror, red taillights streaked and blurred like lines of blood. Then the phone buzzed again. A small, trembling voice came through on Tyler's car speaker. Dad, I'm safe. Uncle T took me. It's raining. My chest seized. Say that again, son. I'm here. You're okay? I'm safe, Dad. Love you. The signal cut. I broke down. For the first time in years, tears came without control. The sound of rain and my sobs hit the glass together, pounding in rhythm like a heart trying to break free. I pulled over, hazard lights flashing, and pressed my face to the steering wheel. Every mile I'd spent away, every promise of, I'll be home soon, all collapsed into one moment. My son trembling in the rain, but alive and safe. Amid the thunder and wind, the phone lit again. A final message from Tyler. We're here. Door locked. The kid's asleep. You do the rest. I stared at the words, feeling all of Bridgeport recede into the distance. Rain hammered the roof like 100 hands drumming urgency into the metal. I drew a breath, turned on the headlights, and pressed the gas. The beams sliced through the downpour, painting the wet road in cold silver. Ahead, the way home no longer looked familiar. It was the border between my past mistakes and the last chance to reclaim the honor of a father. I whispered into the storm, Thank you, son. I'm coming home. When I drove into Pinewood Terrace, the rain had faded into glittering streaks across the windshield. Tyler's house appeared under the soft amber light, quiet, peaceful, almost unreal. The door opened before I even turned off the engine. Tyler stepped out, face tired but eyes steady. Behind him, Lucas sat curled up on the sofa, wrapped in a gray blanket, clutching his old teddy bear. I stepped inside. The wooden floor still bore wet shoe prints. Lucas looked up, his swollen eyes brightening when he saw me. He jumped up and threw his arms around my neck. Dad, you really came back. I knelt and held him tight, feeling his shaky breath and muffled sobs. In that moment, all the years of distance, the endless drives through rain, the excuses of work melted away. All that was left was the warmth of my son and one simple truth. I hadn't come too late. Tyler quietly closed the door and handed me a glass of water. He had some soup, no fever now. I called the family doctor to check him over. Thank you, I said, my voice breaking. He nodded and looked out the window. Cops are heading into Bridgeport. Pete texted, they've got the warrant. Serena won't be able to deny it. My hand trembled around the glass. Through the window, flashing patrol lights flickered in the distance, red and blue rippling across the night like the city's uneven heartbeat. Somewhere out there, Bridgeport was waking into chaos. At that same moment, inside my old house came the pounding on the door. Serena opened it, stunned as 3 officers and a CPS agent stepped in, flashlights cutting through the dark. Mrs. Serena Mills, you are under arrest for second-degree child abuse under Connecticut Penal Code 53-60D. She stumbled back, voice shaking. You're wrong. I was just disciplining my son. The CPS officer spoke firmly, calm but cold. We've seen the video. You should remain silent. Red and blue lights pulsed across the walls, reflecting over the family portrait above the fireplace, Lucas's smiling, innocent face staring back. The officer read her rights. The metallic click of handcuffs echoed sharply, blending with the scattered rain outside. I sat beside the bed. Lucas was asleep now, his breathing soft and even. In the living room, Tyler turned on the small TV. The news anchor spoke. Bridgeport police have arrested a 35-year-old woman on charges of child abuse. The case was uncovered after video evidence provided by the child's father. I switched it off. I couldn't listen. I stepped onto the porch, under the shelter, looking toward the distant horizon where police lights still flickered, the smell of wet earth carried in the night air. I drew a deep breath and whispered, "The truck has made it home." There were no cheers, no tears of victory, only quiet, heavy truth. Inside, Lucas shifted in his sleep and murmured, "Dad, don't go away again." I turned, watching him, and answered in a whisper that felt like a vow, "I'll be here, always." 3 months later, Bridgeport looked normal again. But for me, nothing about life was normal anymore. Every morning, as the sun broke through the misty rooftops, I drove Lucas to the therapy center near the Pequannock River. There, he met with Dr. Nora Jennings, a kind, brown-haired woman who always began each session by letting him draw. The first drawings were all gray, a room, a bed, a storm, but slowly, blue, yellow, and red began to appear. One afternoon, Nora said to me, "He's using bright colors again. That's a very good sign." I just nodded and smiled. Every small step forward was a kind of miracle. I had quit long-haul driving for good. After 17 years, I handed in my resignation and transferred to training new drivers in safety protocols. Now I worked morning shifts and came home every afternoon. The kitchen was always alive with the sounds of clattering pans and the smell of roasted coffee. Those ordinary sounds were things I had lost for too many years. In the evenings, while Lucas did his homework, I sat beside him, teaching him how to calculate distance and turning angles, the things I used to explain over the phone. One night, he looked up at me and asked softly, "Dad, why are you home so much now?" I paused, then said quietly, "Because I learned that some journeys aren't worth trading for a child's silence." Time passed quickly, but it left deep traces in both of us. 3 months later, when the bruises on Lucas's skin had faded, the ones inside were still healing, but at least he could talk about them. I was learning to live slower too, cooking breakfast, teaching him to tie his shoes, sometimes just watching sunlight change color through the trees. Life seemed peaceful, but I knew one door remained open, Serena's trial. When the summons arrived, I read it 3 times. There was no anger left, only a heavy feeling, like standing before a memory I had tried too long to avoid. The courtroom that morning was silent, filled only with the sound of pens scratching and shallow breaths. Serena sat at the defendant's table, hands clasped, face hollow, hair tied back, exposing her forehead. The eyes that once glowed with certainty were now dim, as if she had wandered too far from herself. Before sentencing, the prosecutor read from the psychological report. According to Dr. Lillian Cross, the defendant, Serena Mills, suffers from control disorder and mild depression caused by prolonged stress. Rooted in a childhood of excessive pressure for achievement and discipline, she developed a belief that survival required control. As an adult, this evolved into a compulsion to dominate, especially toward those closest to her. During her husband's extended absences for work, the defendant experienced isolation, emotional stress, and resorted to abusive behavior as a misguided outlet, unaware of the harm she was causing. I sat still, listening as if someone were describing a stranger, a Serena I once loved, once trusted, once thought was the gentlest person in the world. The judge delivered the verdict, an 18-month suspended sentence with mandatory counseling. Near the end, Serena's voice broke the silence, faint and trembling. "May I see my son once? Just once?" The room froze. The judge checked the file and shook his head. "Denied. Psychological recommendations state that contact could trigger distress for the child." I stood up. "Your Honor, if possible, I'd like to allow it. One brief visit, with distance and a social worker present." After a pause, the judge nodded. The adjacent waiting room. Lucas entered, holding his old teddy bear tightly. 10 meters away, Serena stood behind a glass partition, hands trembling against it. She wept without sound. I stood beside my son, resting a hand on his shoulder. Serena spoke, her voice cracking apart. "I'm sorry. I did the worst thing a mother could do. I didn't know. I turned you into the place where I dumped all my fear. When you cried, I saw myself, the child who was told that strength was the only way to be loved. And I repeated it." Her head dropped, tears falling. "I don't expect forgiveness. I just needed to see you once, to know you're still alive, still smiling." Lucas stayed silent, leaning against me, looking through the glass. Their eyes met, one side a child who had once been too afraid to breathe, the other a mother consumed by her own darkness. After a long moment, Serena lowered her hands and turned away. As the staff began to escort her out, Lucas suddenly whispered, voice trembling but clear, "Mom!" She stopped, turned back. Tears rolled down her pale cheeks. Serena managed a weak, genuine smile. "I'm here." The boy didn't move closer. He only clutched his bear and said softly, "I won't forget you." Serena broke down, gripping the doorframe as the officers gently led her away. The door closed behind her, leaving only a small, fading sound of sobbing. Outside the courthouse, early summer wind carried the scent of salt and wet grass. Tyler waited on the steps. Lucas held my hand, his eyes bright. "It's over now, right, Dad?" I brushed his hair and smiled faintly. "Yeah, it's over. Let's go home." The car rolled across the harbor bridge, the water beneath flickering with evening light. I watched my son rest his head and drift into sleep, the sound of waves mixing with the hum of the engine. For the first time in months, peace filled me. Silence once made me lose everything, but it was that same silence, when joined with truth, that saved my son and a piece of her soul. A year has passed. Spring in Bridgeport feels warmer now, the wind carrying the scent of salt and cherry blossoms from along the bay. Every Sunday morning, Lucas and I walk across the small wooden bridge that leads to the harbor, the same place I once left home for every long haul. Today the water lies still as glass, broken only by the cries of seagulls and the wind humming through old mooring ropes. Lucas has grown so much. He no longer fears the sound of rain, nor flinches when doors open. In his hands he holds a small box that he's kept close all morning. "Dad, do you know what today is?" "The day I took my last trip a year ago," I say with a smile. Lucas nods and opens the box. Inside is the little red fire truck, the same one I once saw bound in gray tape, now carefully repaired. The new coat of red paint shines in the sunlight, and its wheels turn again. "I fixed it," he says. "It works now." I take it, my hand trembling slightly. It feels as if I'm holding a year's worth of tears and courage. I pull out my pocket knife and carve into the side of the truck, protected by silence. Lucas tilts his head, reading aloud, then asks, "Dad, what does that mean?" I look out over the shimmering water. It means sometimes silence isn't about fear, but about keeping someone safe. Staying quiet at the right moment helps us hear what truly matters, our own heart and the cry that needs protecting. He nods, his eyes clear as the sea. He takes my hand, and together we look toward the horizon, where sunlight melts into the waves. We sit on the wooden railing, the breeze lifting strands of hair, the sound of the tide steady as the city's breath. A year ago, I lost everything on a night like this. But today, in the same place, I found what matters most: faith. I rest my hand on his shoulder and whisper, "From now on, I won't go far again. This bridge will mark the start of our journeys, not the end." Lucas smiles and leans his head against me. The sun dips low, its gold light glinting on the damp planks beneath our feet. In that moment, I finally understand. Justice doesn't need applause, nor noise. Justice isn't an explosion. It's a headlight cutting through the rain, showing a child the way home. If you've stayed with me until now, thank you, truly. This story isn't just about a father's pain or a mother's remorse. It's a reminder that every act of gratitude, every embrace, every moment we choose to listen instead of judge, can save a child from a darkness we don't see. If you still have your parents, call them tonight. If you are a parent, look at your child a little closer. Not to control, but to understand that sometimes what they need most is your presence. Leave a single dot in the comments if you believe gratitude is the light that leads us back to where we belong. And if you've ever witnessed injustice, ever stayed silent out of fear, remember, silence isn't surrender. It's the first step toward justice when used to protect. Thank you for being here, for listening to a story of fatherhood, redemption, and the power of gratitude. Subscribe, share this story, and tell me where you're listening from, so I'll know that the light of gratitude is still spreading, one city at a time.